Family-centred practice is about the way that the team works with you and your family. It's putting your family's and your child's needs at the centre and working in ways that are effective and work for your family. It's based on a partnership where you're coming together and working as a team.
Family-centred practice for us really means looking at how the supports that are given to Max support the family and the relationships within that family as a whole. Because focusing in just on Max ignores the fact that he's part of a unit. Whenever I engage with service providers, it is very much an interview. Before I'm even interested in getting on their wait list, I have a series of questions I want to know the answer to, one of which is, how do you feel about working with a queer family that's positively neurodiverse? We do not see neurodiversity as a deficit. We are proudly queer. My children have 2 mums. Is that something that you can work with?
In regards to how service providers approach our family, they clearly identify me as Sam's mum, and Sam is a child with a disability who needs assistance. I would engage an agency to work with us as a family. The therapist comes to the house and they engage Sam. I'm there with it, I can see what's happening and I can learn from what's happening in that process. A child like Sam doesn't learn from an hour of therapy. He learns from ongoing intervention surrounded around him. He almost needs to be immersed into it. And in order to do that, you have to engage the family and you have to teach the parent how to assist Sam on a daily basis.
Family-centred practice is important because it builds on your family's strengths and it helps your child work within their real life.
Supporting Max also means making sure that Tash and I and Oscar are all being supported as well. And that can look like including Oscar in some of Max's therapy sessions. So, for example, one of Max's current goals is around building his relationship with his brother. So that needs a little bit of intervention and teaching them how to play together so that they don't just bash heads very quickly.
Family-centred practice should feel safe and comfortable, like you're being heard, where your choices and your needs are respected, where you don't need to justify or explain yourself or your family. And it involves the people you want involved, those who are important to your family.
A lot of our experiences are really positive, and I think that comes back to how carefully we engage providers. I very much look at us as a team, and if people aren't willing to be a team player, then it's never going to work out for us because I need everybody pulling together, including Tash, Oscar and I. So roughly once a quarter I have a call with all Max's support workers and all his current therapists to just cover off the goals we're working on and where Max is at in terms of his needs and basically where he's working at the time. We also have a WhatsApp group with that same group of people so I can share information with them just once and I don't need to keep repeating it.
Sam is non-verbal and initially he actually didn't have any communication method at all. That's something that has come over time and it's something that I've learned a lot in terms of, from therapists, in terms of how to give him that ability to communicate, and it's working really well. We understand each other now because we've had this ability, because we've had this training to teach us how we can communicate with each other.
Family-centred practice has to be the way we work moving forward, in my view. If Max was somebody else's child, what his needs would be different. You can't deal with a person in any capacity, disability or otherwise, as an island.
Connections to the queer community for some LGBTIQ plus people is at the very core of their being. They may have had difficult experiences with their family of origin, so their chosen family, their queer family, becomes even more important. And everyone's definition of family is different. But everybody has the right for their family to be respected and valued.
Community, for me, means connection to the important parts of my identity. So I'm a fabulous queer, in case you didn't guess. I'm also gender diverse. I'm also a wheelchair user and I take great pride in all those aspects of my identity. So for me, community is multifaceted, and it's about finding belonging and connection to those parts of myself and my identity. And also as a parent, being able to take my child to those parts of community that we belong to as a family, and feel supported in those spaces.
Connection to community is everything for me. It is just, I'm quite a social person. I enjoy engaging with people, and Sam enjoys engaging with people. I have a small family, and I have quite a lot of friends who are well engaged with us and have a good understanding of Sam's needs. So in terms of us spending time with other people and bringing on that social stuff, it generally happens at home. With my sexuality, plus single parenting, plus a child with a disability, it's changed the pecking order. The Sam with a disability is at the top of the pecking order. Things have to be done in a way that meets his needs. The second part has now become single parenting. We'd have to do things that can work for a single parent family. The sexuality has actually gone down to the bottom level. It used to be much more important, and it was the top of some of my pecking order sometimes in terms of how I chose to socialise and the places I chose to go. Having a child with a disability has literally turned it on its head.
Disability can impact someone's connection to their community in a lot of different ways. So it can impact connection because the built environment isn't accessible, so a lot of spaces have steps to get into, a lot of transport's not accessible. So it can really impact the kind of opportunities you have in your life to just connect with other people in the community.
Some families will say that it can be quite difficult to stay connected to the queer community, but they also say that for a lot of them, it's really important to find ways to keep and to maintain those connections.
I wanted to try and go away on a Rainbow Families weekend, and we hired our own cabin, and some of the activities were to occur near the beach. We were in a place where Sam could run in a lot of different directions because he loves to be out running. It's something he really enjoys. So I said, look, I can't take him down there. It's not very safe. It came to their attention that we couldn't participate in the structure that it was, so they changed the structure. So they moved the event up to outside our cabin. So it was, I think I was in tears. It was just so incredibly special. It was the first time that I'd actually seen something like that happen, and it was amazing. I think that happened because the focus of a Rainbow Families weekend is inclusion. It's all about inclusion. And we were excluded by design, so they changed the design.
One of the ways that I think people can really utilise the NDIS language of reasonable and necessary for community connection is by really clearly tying it to your goals and your plan and looking at, why is it reasonable that I feel connected to the LGBTIQA plus community as a parent with a young child? Well, it's really key for my sense of belonging, for my sense of independence, for my parenting goals. Your peer group is a super important part of your life. We know that people with disabilities are more likely to experience isolation and less social connection than their peers without disabilities. So really having supports in your life and having NDIS funded supports is really, really important to be able to develop your sense of self as a young person.
Sam should have access to any activity, any part of the community that anybody else does. He shouldn't be excluded in any way. In order to allow that to happen, we need support. And I consider that support to be totally reasonable and necessary in order to meet his developmental needs and allow him to learn from being in the environment.
Thinking about goals and setting goals is a really important part of the NDIS planning process. Each child is different and each child's goals will be different, but they'll all relate to the child's development, to their needs and to their interests. Your child's goals might be different to another child's goals, so all funding plans are going to be different.
So my name's Kaz. I have a 7-year-old son, Sam. He has level 3 autism, which is the most severe level of diagnosis, and he has a severe intellectual disability as well. He is non-verbal, and his comprehension about social norms and anything verbal is very limited. When I first came to setting goals for Sam when he was first approved for NDIS, it was about increasing his social skills, increasing his comprehension, increasing his ability to communicate with other people.
So my family is comprised of my wife, Tash, or Natasha, and our two sons, Max, who's just turned 9, and Oscar, who's just turned 7. Our first lot of goals for Max were really around addressing key lagging skills that we could see in him at that time. It was about communication. It was about engaging with his peers at school. It was very much around, well, how do we upskill you so that you can do what you want to do when you want to do it?
Children change over time, and their needs and their interests will change over time. That means their goals will also change. It's important to think about how you can involve your child and engage them in talking about and thinking about their goals for their NDIS plans.
Sam is now 7, he's only just turned 7. What he wants from the world is now very different to what it was when he was 2. So now that the goals have actually changed quite a lot. They're probably umbrella goals now. The goal, for example, might be to increase Sam's social skills, but there's lots of ways that we can do that in order to meet that goal. One of the things that Sam loves to do is to be in the community. He really enjoys being out with other people. But Sam has no sense of danger. He has zero impulse control. It's a barrier for him to be in the community without one-on-one supervision. So in order to try and address that and have him in the community, which is he has every right to have, we've put in some kind of social skills and road skills in order to try and keep him safe. One of the things that we've been doing with Sam is taking him to the supermarket. So in the lead up to going to the supermarket, he has a visual about what he's going to the supermarket to buy. He carries the basket. We find the object and compare it to the visual. We put it in his basket. He scans the item, he pays for the item, and then we go home and we have the item. So that, and the more we do that, the more Sam learns what different things are in the community and how he can interact with them to meet his own needs. And the only way for Sam to learn that stuff is repetition.
Max's goals have absolutely changed over time. As he grows, they need to grow with him. We are now focusing perhaps more on physical goals. Max can't move from one end of our local Westfield to the other by himself because he gets overwhelmed. So his goals at the moment are around actually leaving the house. They're also around actually giving him the physical strength to move under his own propulsion.
Therapy itself is not the goal. It's part of a strategy that might be used to work towards a bigger goal. So speech therapy, for example. Speech therapy isn't the goal. Speech therapy might be a tool that's used to work towards a bigger goal, which might be communicating more effectively at home.
Just for an example, so I want Sam to improve his communication ability, or I want Sam to improve his comprehension. The overarching goal works better, and then you can engage the service that still is working towards that goal, but if it's so defined, it limits the services that you can use. The early intervention providers that were doing the plan interviews, they worked out that this is actually a much more appropriate way of doing it, and it actually allows for so much better service provision to the family and to the child. It's about wording the goal as an umbrella term.
As parents today, we have these great expectations for what our children can do from a very young age. And sometimes you actually just need a professional to pull you back a little bit and go, actually, what they're doing is completely age appropriate in this area, but they're behind in this area, and so maybe we can give them the skills to upskill them in that area. People often think that disability, long-term disability, is like an injury. So if you sprain your ankle and you have to go and see the physio, there's a linear pathway to getting better. Disability and long-term disability, it's not a linear spectrum. His disability isn't going to go away. How he engages and how his disability means he engages with the world is going to change just like it does for any other human as he changes and as he evolves.
In choosing a service for your family, You'll be thinking about how a service values and respects your family, but also whether they have the skills and experience to meet the disability needs of your child.
When looking for a new service provider, I'm looking specifically at what goal and what need it's trying to meet for Max. First and foremost, when trying to find that new service, I start with his existing service providers. Who do you know? And then once I've kind of got an idea of the kind of support I'm looking for, then it's let's hit the message boards, groups for autistic people. Let's hit the local ADHD groups. Let's talk to friends and family. And who are you working with? Who are you finding that's really great at the moment in this area? And you often find through word of mouth the people that you wouldn't find otherwise. And often you find out who to avoid as well. By talking to enough people, you'll often find the right person to help you achieve the goal that you're after at that moment in time.
Families have different needs and different priorities. Some families will choose to seek out disability-specific type services, whereas others might look for queer-identified services or individuals. Whichever way you go is up to you. You know your family best, you know what's important to your family and what your family needs. But remember that along the way, you can change your mind and you can change your services.
When I go to choose a new service for therapy for Sam, I look at a service that has a really good understanding of autism and a really good understanding of the needs of a child with severe autism. If I was choosing a care service, then I will look slightly differently. I'll try and identify the needs that Sam has in that situation, and I'd choose an appropriate service and person that could meet those needs. I have an agency that does his after-school care. I use support workers 4 times a week. Sam is a child who actually likes having different people around. He really enjoys that. He sees it as a friend who he's playing with for the day. I honestly think that's how he sees it, because he does. He just plays with them and he loves it. So having different carers actually works for us quite well.
I have a lot of different humans in my life and a lot of different kinds of support in my life. And I guess the main kind of common thread that I use to find supports that work for me is my queer network and the people that are trusted by other LGBTQ folk to provide services and supports that feel responsive and receptive and respectful of our identities. I've just been really clear when I've contacted them about who I am and what my identities are, and that I don't expect them to be LGBTQA+, but I expect them to kind of feel comfortable navigating what that means for me and my family.
Some families feel really comfortable being upfront and direct with providers about their family and what they need. For other people, that can be more difficult, and they may have had a bad experience with a previous service provider where they didn't feel safe in their responses.
There are still stigmas attached to being gay, to being queer, to being in a same-sex relationship, to being non-binary, to being trans. All those things, I'm in a really privileged position that I can stand up and say, this is who I am, deal with it, and if you don't like it, take a jog. But I know not everybody's in that position. I'm interviewing for new speech pathologists for both boys at the moment who have different speech pathology needs. And my upfront email includes the fact that the kids have two mums and that we are a neurodiverse household and that they need to be able to work with all of us as we are. And is that something they're interested in doing?
For some families, there might be limited choices in services. For example, if you live in a rural or remote area, there might not be a lot of options, and you might find yourself in a position where you need to work with the services that are there. So when you're setting those expectations, you might want to write down things like the roles and responsibilities. Be clear about how you share information and how you talk about your family. Be clear about the things that are okay and not okay in your home. Talk through how you want them to respond in certain situations. Having services in your home can be a big adjustment. Your home is your safe space, and you need to feel safe with people coming in and out of your home. All family members need to feel safe with that person or that service coming in and providing support.
Setting expectations for what's okay and what's not okay in our house is complicated by the fact that the service providers aren't actually necessarily working with Tash or I. So they're working with a minor child. So we have to be really clear what is and isn't acceptable from the get-go.
Having people who provide support that understand our rainbow family and understand pronouns and understand gender identity stuff is really important for me to feel safe to ask that person for the kind of supports that I need and to feel like they're going to understand how to refer to me as a parent for my kid, and like utilising my pronouns and that kind of stuff is really has really been important for me in terms of feeling connected and safe to those people as well.
It can be difficult for children, especially older children, to have services and people coming into their safe space. Having conversations with your child and with the service provider are really important to be clear about the roles and the responsibilities, the expectations of the service, and how they work with your family. So what's okay to do in your home, what's not okay in your home, how you want them to talk about your family, and things like privacy and confidentiality. By talking about those things and then having regular check-ins about that with the service provider can make sure that everybody feels safe and everybody's is clear about those expectations.
All Max's therapists currently attend the house to see him. That means at the moment, speech therapist, occupational therapist, psychologist, dietitian, exercise physiologist and physiotherapist all attend our home to provide services. Keeping the house safe for everybody when you've got people in and out all day long can be a bit like managing Grand Central Station on a given day. And it can feel chaotic, but it's worth it to keep that safe space of our home.
I guess one of the ways that I've tried to avoid feeling like I have to educate people in terms of the kind of services and supports that I might want that are LGBTQA plus sensitive to me and my family is by hiring people that share some of those intersections so that they're already going to be across gender diversity, for example, and they don't necessarily have to kind of do some one-on-one education with that person.
There are things that you need to communicate to other people frequently. So you do end up becoming a bit of an educator to anybody who's within your home.
And that can be a challenging conversation. You've got to correct somebody who's coming into your home to help your child, and yet you've got to redirect that service provider away from something they've said or something they're doing, and you've got to redirect them in such a way that it doesn't damage their relationship with Max. And that can actually be the trickier part of it all.
I self-manage my plan, and even though that's a lot more work in some ways, it really enables me to then choose the people that I trust, that I know that share some of my identities. I feel comfortable with them kind of coming into that intimate space of my family life.
When I am engaging a service, when it comes to care for Sam, when there's someone caring for him when I'm not there, a lot of that I do in writing, and I do a lot of quite specific instructions in terms of how I would like things done, because Sam needs to feel safe in his routine. So I need that person to continue with Sam's routine so that he continues that feeling of safety.
With Max's support workers and therapists, we have a WhatsApp group which lets us all share information quickly and easily about any problems that have come up, but it also means that if I need to share some information about what Max is currently finding challenging, I can share it once and I don't need to keep repeating it every time somebody comes in the house or every time somebody's got a question about why maybe something's been a bit more challenging in their session.
In terms of safety in my home for me and for my son when I'm not here, a lot of the doors in the house are locked because Sam has no sense of danger. There's a lot of visuals around the house, just even on the front door. There's a visual to say you need to lock it like this because Sam can open this door.
I've gone about it in terms of kind of outlining it, usually in a little bit of a written form, or having a bit of a phone conversation and then writing down kind of what I would see as the main tasks that need to happen, and then trying to have a kind of ongoing conversation about how the relationship or support is kind of working.
We know that some people have experienced intrusive or inappropriate questions. If you find yourself in that situation, it can be really useful just to ask the person why they need that information. And if they don't need the information, then you don't need to be an educator for everyone. It's okay to put some boundaries around how much information you share to keep you and your family safe.
In terms of being an activist, I find that that's not all that necessary inside my home, but it is necessary in the community. I've had people ask me around these things and I will happily explain it to them, because the more you share the knowledge, the more acceptance there is in the community. So it has happened on occasion where people have asked me questions that are intrusive, and I don't feel they have a right to know that information.
Sometimes it is just being nosy. And it's making people stop and think about, well, why am I actually asking that question before I answer it? That usually either makes the question go away or gives me an insight into what they really want to know. Just because something appears irrelevant or intrusive on its surface doesn't mean that's what's driving the question. I don't avoid being an activist and an educator all the time, and not just of other people, but of myself. So I'm constantly challenging my own assumptions about things. Because all our services for Max are based in our home can't be advocacy free.
Safety means different things in different situations. Physical safety means there's no one and there's nothing in an environment that's going to cause you harm. Thinking about emotional safety, you might think about whether you feel safe to be able to be your whole self and to bring your whole of person to that environment. Thinking about your cultural safety might mean looking at whether your culture, your values and belief is respected and protected in that space. For many LGBTIQ+ people, being safe means thinking about those things in all of their interactions with people and with other services.
A safe service for our family looks like one that accepts our family for who we are. It's one that every member of the family feels comfortable engaging with. It's someone who's respectful of the makeup of our family. A safe service is seeing who we are and it's being respectful of who we are.
One of the core ideas inside the Rainbow Tick framework is that LGBTIQ people have the right to cultural safety. They have the right to access services that have done the work to make sure that they have a consistent, equitable, safe access to that service where they can be their whole self, where that's celebrated.
So in terms of safety for my child and for myself, it looks different than it would look like probably for a neurotypical family. I didn't realise the level of hypervigilance when you have a non-verbal child. Keeping Sam safe for me is just as important as it is for every other, parent and child. It's just that I can't ask him what's been going on. I can't ask him those things. Once I feel that there is a safety within that service, I can just calm down.
The experience of coming out isn't a one-off. It's something we do every day. And we never know how people are going to react or how that reaction might make us feel. So thinking about safety, and your emotional safety, physical safety and cultural safety is a really important part of making choices around the services you want involved with your family.
I think the biggest strategy I use is research and interview. So my first step is always look at their website. I will always want to do a face-to-face interview with somebody who I'm going to engage to work with us in any shape or form. And I will always do that outside our house. I will also then invite them to come and meet Max, because I want to see how they actually interact with him on a human level.
Some of the signs you can look for about that someone's done the work to be more culturally safe is the language that people use, the options to provide pronouns on a form, the options to describe your gender in a way that's accurate, the way that they talk about relationships. A lot of language stuff can really create cultural safety.
When thinking about safe services, there are things you can consider. You can look for things like a rainbow sticker or the rainbow tick. Might help to develop a bit of a script about your family. It might help to be really clear about what it is that you want to know or what you need from the service. And looking at social media and other community message boards can help in finding out a bit more about local services.
I've kind of got some goalposts or some gateways that are my checkpoints, and they've come from trial and error. You learn over time what works for you as both a person and with a disability and what works for you as a family that needs support.
LGBTIQ people experience particular marginalization and discrimination, and that will prime LGBTIQ people to be expecting the worst, actually. So what safety looks like for LGBTQ people in health and human services or disability services is clear signals to us that the picture of the world that service sees and wants to portray to the world is one where we are celebrated, where we are definitely of equal value.
Choice and control is a fundamental part of the NDIS, and at its core it means that you have the right to change services. So if you're feeling unsafe, you have the right to change services. We know that for some people that might not be so easy. For example, if you're living in a rural or a remote area, there might not be a lot of alternative options. So for some people, it is important to find ways to work with the services that they've got. Remember that you're in control of your information and you only need to say as much as you feel comfortable with.
I think trying to manage a dynamic with an individual or service that isn't being as accepting or inclusive as you would like is really, really tough. You're needing, a referral from them, or you're needing some kind of level of support from them still. And so you're stuck in that interaction to some degree. And one of the ways that I've found to try and navigate that dynamic is to just be really clear about what I need to get out of it and how I need to utilise it to move to the next step of whatever it is that I'm there for and seeking support on. But just kind of letting some of that stuff slide, having a big debrief with my partner afterwards, finding that support in other ways, but utilising the kind of assistance that I need from that professional in the ways that work for me and keep me feeling safe. So sometimes we don't need to speak back to everything.
There is a constant coming out, both as queer and a queer family and as a disabled family. For example, a lot of therapists will always talk with kids about mum and dad. And it's that constant, well, actually, the boys have a mum and a mama. Or D is autistic and has ADHD, so D must have carried the boys. Actually, no, I'm not genetically related to the boys in any way, shape or form. So that's another form of coming out that I've got to do. I've got to justify how I created my family. I can't go to the doctor without being asked about how my pregnancy was. It's constantly explaining every aspect of your life in a way that I don't think other people have to do quite as much.
I have actually been asked a couple of times where Sam's dad is because I am a single parent. And it's actually children that have asked those questions. And when I'm speaking to a child to answer that question, I'll just explain the differences between families and that Rainbow Families is another type of family. And they accept that beautifully.
We've been really lucky in that we've somehow managed to find this fantastic group of queer, neurodiverse, non-binary support workers, both as support workers for Max and also support workers for Tash and I. And it's a fantastic little group that we've created around us that's very much a queer-friendly, neurodiverse-friendly little family group.